Good evening and welcome to Tiny Homes for Homeless Veterans. I'll be your host this evening. I'm Denise, library technician at the Longmont Public Library. And with me is Johannes. He is also a library technician at the library. So now I'd like to just introduce to you, this is Paul Melroy. He's the executive director for the Veterans Community Project of Colorado.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Denise. I'm going to go ahead and launch right in here. And let's see. All right, I hope everybody can see the presentation here. I'm Paul Melroy. I'm the executive director of the Veterans Community Project in Colorado. Really pleased to be with you all this evening. Appreciate the library and the friends of the Longmont Library for putting this series together and for giving us the chance to talk about what we're doing. Before we get too much further along here, I'm going to spend a moment telling you a little bit about my background. I'm a veteran. I'm going to show you a short video about the genesis of VCP and our expansion plans. And I've got a short PowerPoint presentation that'll give you some additional detail. And we'll wrap up with a Q&A afterwards if anybody has any questions. So, as I mentioned, I'm a Navy veteran myself. This is the USS Nassau, LHA-4. Was home ported in Norfolk, Virginia. That's where I was home ported at. So I've had a long career in the nonprofit world, but I am a proud Navy veteran. I served as a bosun's mate on the Nassau, and I was a peacetime veteran. So I did get to do a lot of crazy and interesting and sometimes dangerous things and saw quite a bit of the world. But, I wanted to mention that my Navy experience taught me quite a bit. I was an enlisted man. I had to learn to live with quite a diverse group of people, vastly different people than I grew up with. The tech department on a Navy ship is a great equalizer. Everybody chips paint and swabs decks and stands watch, and they generally work their tail off. In my book, bosun's mates are the real sailors out there, and you shouldn't let anybody tell you differently. I did not, thankfully, ever have the experience of being shot at, and I did experience some of the things that modern soldiers and sailors and Marines feel, the 24/7 nature of your work. Being out at sea can be very isolating. There's also some terrific bonding that comes with working with really terrific people under strenuous circumstances. And I look back on that real fondly, but I did my service without any lasting trauma. And that's not true for Vietnam era vets, and that's definitely not true for Afghanistan and Iraq war vets. Trauma's played sort of an inordinate role in many of their lives, and it's had some pretty big consequences. So I'm going to show you a short video here that tells you a little bit about VCP, and then we'll come back to the slideshow.
Veterans Day tomorrow, 2 Kansas City vets will launch a new effort to help struggling homeless veterans here in Kansas City.
Tonight, 41 Action News report.
Under construction, and it will arrive in January.
Well, another giant step forward to end veteran homelessness in Kansas City. The Veterans Community Project
right now,
this
Kansas City,
morning.
the Veterans Community Project has a property where they're going to put 50 tiny homes, just like the one that you see behind me.
The Veterans Community Project moved 13 homeless vets into tiny homes. Now it's
Thank you for your personal service and Veterans Community Project as well.
Since January, all 13 tiny homes have been full, and VCP has transitioned 6 veterans into permanent housing.
A substantial portion of America's homeless are veterans, but too often traditional approaches just don't work when it comes to veterans homelessness. But in Kansas City, one group of combat veterans has found a solution. This first-of-its-kind model has made enormous progress, and now Veterans Community Project has begun its national expansion and is looking for other communities ready to get serious about serving veterans.
What we wanted to do couldn't be done without commitment from the city. Veterans sleep on city streets and city parks. This is a local issue.
Every mayor in this country knows that you have to learn to do more with less. And one of the ways that we do that is through public-private partnerships. Veterans Community Project has been tremendous. This is something that I believe every mayor wants in their town. I can tell you from my perspective, it's one of the best things that's happened during the time I've been mayor. And I think that if you incorporate it into your city, your state, your country, it'll be one of the best things that we do as well. After I came home from Afghanistan, I spent nearly 12 years running from the reality of untreated post-traumatic stress. When I hit my lowest point and finally decided to seek help, I quickly realized I didn't actually know how to do that. Fortunately, I live here in Kansas City, and even though VCP is best known for tiny houses, they also provide wraparound services to thousands of veterans, no matter their situation. They guided me through the process and made sure that I got the help that I needed. VCP was there for me, and now I have the honor of leading their national expansion.
What can Veterans Community Project do on a national scale, do you think?
Absolutely. We can end veterans homelessness in this country.
The national push will put them in 8 more locations by 2022.
3 presidential candidates have now visited Kansas City. All of their trips here had one thing in common: the Veterans Community Project. Reporter Kat Reed.
I'm going to be sharing this kind of a story everywhere I go.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Congressman Seth Moulton saw for themselves the way this village of tiny homes is solving veteran homelessness in Kansas City.
Their VCP, as it's called, will break ground on a new village in Longmont, Colorado next month. They are in talks with many more cities interested in having their own tiny houses and food.
These homes are all free of charge. This program now expanding to other cities nationwide.
We know how to end veteran homelessness. The only question is, which community is ready to step up and be our next partner? To get this done, we need your support. This is your opportunity to be more than thankful to veterans. This is your chance to be involved.
All right. As you can tell, we've captured a little bit of lightning in a bottle in Kansas City, and we're very excited to be hopefully in 8 different cities by the end of next year. Longmont is our first expansion city, and I'm going to talk in a little bit about how that kind of came to be. But I want to kind of take a step back here and talk a little bit about the problem that we're trying to solve. So as a country, I think everybody's aware that we haven't done the best job taking care of our veterans, particularly combat vets. Another big issue is that VA services are not available to all vets, and I'm betting some of you didn't know this. If you have a discharge status that is, say, dishonorable or other than honorable, you may be limited or may have no access to VA benefits. And I want you to think about a vet who maybe has multiple tours in Afghanistan or Iraq. They've got some untreated PTSD, undiagnosed PTSD. They go home on leave, get in a bar fight or something silly like that. They get kicked out of the service with a dishonorable. If that fight was triggered by PTSD, I would argue they probably aren't being treated real fairly here. And we've seen this sort of situation happen over and over again. And it's just one example, but there's just thousands of situations kind of like that ultimately lead to some people desperately needing help. Our dream is to end veteran homelessness everywhere. That is our mission in the most succinct form. As you heard about in the video, we had a handful of combat vets come together with a vision to work on this problem. And the first priority we came up with was to serve anybody that took the oath. We don't care if you served for 5 minutes or for 35 years. We don't care how many deployments you had. We don't care what the nature of your discharge was. As long as you were willing to take that oath and risk your life for your country, then we're willing to provide help. That's our mission in a nutshell. According to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, and this is a little stale information, I think these numbers have gone up, about 37,800 veterans were experiencing homelessness on a single night in January of 18, right? So roll forward 3 years now, I think those numbers are just slightly higher, particularly with COVID. At the end of 2019, that number was about the same. At the end of 2019, there were just under 10,000 estimated homeless people in Colorado. I don't care what part of the country you're in. If you look at any given homeless population, roughly 20 to 25% of them are going to be veterans. It's consistent across the board, no matter what part of the country you're in. Colorado, I think, actually runs slightly higher. We have a lot of vets in Colorado. It's really difficult to get an accurate count on these folks. Vets often have pets for emotional support, and they usually can't take those pets into shelters, which is where a lot of the counts are done. So the problem, we suspect, is a little worse than we've pinpointed. Normally, about 40% of homeless vets are living in what we would think of as pretty rough situations, and 1.5 million veterans live in poverty. I'm staggered by both of those statistics, and I kind of hope you are too. There's just something really not right about that. Another really horrifying statistic here, and this number's up. This says 22 veterans die each day from suicide. That may be up between 26 and 28 veterans right now per day. It's more than double the rate of the general population, and we know PTSD is at the root of all of this. That's the main driver here, the main cause. We focus on 3 areas at VCP. So we, as you saw, provide transitional housing, the tiny homes. Again, that's transitional housing. That's not permanent housing. We provide case management to the residents, and we provide case management through our outreach center. Last year, we served about 4,500 vets in Kansas City. So really, when you look at the bulk of the work we're doing, the tiny houses are kind of the cool, shiny object that people can wrap their head around. But the meat of our work is actually day-to-day working with vets that are either experiencing homelessness or at risk of it. We provide outreach for any vet in need. We don't have an outreach center set up just yet in Longmont. I'm talking to the city right now about taking over a city-owned space and hoping that comes together in the next couple of weeks here. We are providing mobile services, though. We've been providing services basically all of 2020. I've got 2 case managers now. They're both, we all work, our whole staff works out of our cars and our homes, but we have helped dozens of vets already this year. We've housed about a dozen vets and provided assistance to quite a few more. I think we did about $16,000 in emergency financial assistance last year too, and expect to do quite a bit more of that this year. So hopefully we'll have that physical location set up soon in downtown Longmont. The third thing we do is we connect veterans with the community. So, you know, our name has the word community in it. It is part of the formula for success. We are very much about getting veterans to feel like they're part of the community and getting the community to embrace the veterans. As mentioned earlier, we find ways to say yes to any vet in need. We do this by remaining privately funded. We don't take federal or state dollars that have any sort of restrictions on them. So we're privately funded, which means that we get donations and philanthropy from foundations, from corporations, and from individual folks just like y'all. And we're working to change the federal and state funding so that maybe there aren't so many strings. But while they exist, we work around them. Something else we do is work with veterans who have blemished discharge statuses to get those changed and upgraded, hopefully to a point where they can get more benefits. And we've been very successful with that. That process can be a little hard on the front end. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes it appears to be a little bit unfair. One of our pillars, again, is getting the community involved. About 70% of the labor involved with building our tiny homes is volunteer. It's a very similar model to the Habitat for Humanity model. And we find, you know, that the volunteers who work with us find it to be really rewarding. And in turn, we wind up with a bunch of really engaged supporters. So it's a win-win for us, and it's a lot of fun. This is what the village looks like in Kansas City, and you saw it back during the brief film clip. It's 49 tiny homes, 5,000 square foot community center, Wraparound services, our case managers work out of there. I believe we have 4 case managers working that right now. We try to have about a 10-to-1 ratio of veterans to case managers to allow us to really give them a lot of attention. The community center in Kansas City is pretty amazing. It's got a vet office, veterinary office. It has a dental office in it. We're not going to have some of those things here in Longmont, but it really does have some terrific resources. It has a big fellowship hall and a community kitchen and those types of things we will have here in Longmont. Pets, as I mentioned, are a big thing with our residents. We use the term providing housing with dignity. It's something very, very important to VCP and to the vets we serve. So if you look closely at the houses, you'll see that the windows are only placed on one side of the house. And that's so that people aren't looking in. Your next door neighbor's not peering in at you. We use something called trauma-informed design. So it shapes where we put the bed so that they're facing the door. It affects the insulation we use. The walls in these tiny homes are a couple inches thicker than they really need to be because we want them to be quiet, and it also makes them very energy efficient. But mostly, we want our vets to feel safe, and we want them to feel like they've got some dignity. So that's a big deal. But I think about 2/3 of our residents in Kansas City have pets. I think there's even a boa restrictor in the bunch. I'm not quite sure how that's an emotional support animal, but we welcome the pets. Getting into a tiny house requires a few things. And, we measure basically 5 different areas that we consider to be critical success factors. Things like your financial wherewithal to run a household budget, your mental health, your physical health, your workforce readiness. All of these things are taken into account, and we need to see progress in all of these areas, as well as a commitment to continue to progress to get into this program. Residents who do get in do not pay rent. They don't pay utilities. They get to stay free of charge. We want them to save their money. And if they're working, we want them to save their pay. And if they're on disability, we want them to still save some money so that when they move out, they've got money for deposits and things like that. The average stay is between 16 and 18 months in Kansas City. We would expect the same here. They can stay up to 2 years with us. The rate of success is actually quite a bit higher than that 65%. We're up into roughly 85% in Kansas City, which is, I think the average for programs like this is in the 30%, 35% range. So we're very proud of what we're doing, and I would attribute that success rate to largely to stemming from the case management we do. We really are quite focused on the case management. This is the Outreach Center in Kansas City, and again, they served about 4,500 vets there last year. We have more modest expectations for Northern Colorado, but it's important for us to have a bricks and mortar place for people to walk into. What we are discovering, Longmont is obviously not Kansas City, and Northern Colorado has one particular challenge Kansas City doesn't have, which is transportation. So we're discovering that there's pockets of veterans all over the place in Greeley, Fort Collins, and in some pretty rural areas. So we have focused on, getting out to them and taking our services out to them. And we're still discussing ways to sort of double down on that. But that's going to be a big part of what we do here in Northern Colorado, because, if you're up in Greeley or Fort Collins, it's hard to get down to Longmont if you don't have a car, you don't have transportation. So we keep that in mind. These are some of the outreach activities we did in Kansas City last year, and we're kind of doing the same thing here. As I mentioned, Kansas transportation is an issue. We're doing a lot of things like hygiene kits, the occasional meal box right now. In fact, we've got a caravan that we're going to do with Hope for Longmont tomorrow afternoon. We'll be going throughout Longmont, trying to scour up all the vets in need that we can find, and hopefully bring some help to them. We are worried about what will ultimately be a wave of foreclosures and evictions. Some of that's been forestalled, but we're already seeing the numbers come up. Landlords have been finding loopholes to kick people out, and we also expect there to be a really high demand for emergency financial assistance. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like. Not uncommon for us to run into a vet who he might be housed at the moment, but they've got a car that's not working, and they're going to lose their job if they can't put $500 in repairs into their car. We'll fund something like that. We'll help fund a deposit for a department if that's appropriate. We'll do whatever we can do to particularly keep vets housed if they're already housed. And if they're not housed, we do things like we've paid off evictions and credit issues and things like that, so that people can get their history cleared, help them with housing going forward. So there's lots of ways that we can help vets. As I mentioned, I think you may have heard during the video, we hope to be in 8 cities by the end of next year, and Longmont is the first expansion city. This is a picture of the site in Longmont. It's behind, I don't know, half a mile or so behind the Home Depot, west of the Home Depot. Longmont, it's in an area that's bounded by Nelson Airport, Rogers, and Hover. It's going to be part of a 65-acre development called Mountain Brook, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But as you can see, there's a nice view of the Front Range from there. I don't know too many developments like this that would have an amenity like that. So we've secured sponsorships for, I think, 25 of the 26 homes, and we're still working on completing funding for our community center. This is roughly a $5 million project. Upon its completion, just as an aside, we'll be providing about $1 million in services to the area in an aggregate basis each year. This is a top-down view of the Longmont site, and as you can see, there are some those little blue boxes on the side. Those are 8 habitat homes that will also be part of this this village. So there's a development firm called HMS here in Longmont, and HMS is donating 3 acres to us of this big 65-acre project. You can get an idea of the scope of that there. That subdivision is going to have a combination of apartments, condos, and single-family homes. They'll range from about the upper 200s to some of the single-family homes will be over $900,000. And we don't know of a project like this anywhere in the country. The developers literally view this as an amenity, and I don't know if I've drunk that Kool-Aid just yet, but they're hoping that the residents here will want to volunteer and help out with the village. And it's my hope that works out too. But this is a little bit of a grand experiment, and we're pretty excited about that. This is a close-up of the village. Like I said, those are the habitat homes there on the left. And you can see the 26 homes we have planned, as well as where our community center will be. And we hope to be starting construction this spring. In fact, I just got word from the developers today. They're hoping to hear tomorrow that their overall plan's been approved by the city, which will help us start getting a timeline together on our construction. We're hoping somewhere in April that we're laying foundations and going vertical. The main things that have to happen before that are the improvements to the land have to go in, the sewer pipes and the utilities and things like that. When HMS makes the donation to us, it will be improved property. So that's very exciting. This is a picture of some of the elevations. You may have noticed some of the other pictures of Kansas City that we try to mix it up a little bit so each house doesn't look exactly the same. And kind of in summary, I'm hoping some of you are wondering a little bit more about how we work and how things happen. I'm going to show you the website address here in a minute. It's real easy. It's www.vcp.org. It'll tell you a little bit about how we fund our budget and how we work with volunteers. We work with quite a few volunteers. I've been just wildly impressed here in Longmont with the number of folks that have reached out saying they want to help us build our homes. I think people that have habitat experiences know that it can be a lot of fun and very rewarding. But we'll probably have a few hundred volunteers working with us. If anybody wants to swing a hammer or paintbrush or is interested in things like that, definitely come to vcp.org and check out our website. And there's ways to sign up for things like that on there. But we do what we can do because we have so much wonderful help from so many people in quite a variety of ways. So that's our long website there. Like I said, you can just use vcp.org too. But in any case, I appreciate getting a chance to chat a little bit about what we're up to, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and welcome any questions at this point.
Paul, we have a question here. Are all homes ADA accessible? I noticed the counters are standard height.
They are not. So we do have some folks who require handicap access in Kansas City. We've got two different houses. We have a single occupancy house that's 240 square feet. It's impossible to turn that into an ADA compliant space. We have 5 of the 26 houses will be what we call our family house. So they're actually designed so that a single parent and up to, I think, 4 kids that they put bunk beds in can live in those houses. We have been able to retrofit those houses for some handicap situations. It is not quite big enough to be able to spin a wheelchair around in the bathroom. That is our biggest holdup on being ADA compliant. But for the most part, we've been able to kind of work around that. But at the moment, we have focused on the size of the house has been dictated by the trying to have efficient use of the land and get as many houses on there as possible. So that's the tack we have taken.
All right, and another question says, what will be housed in your community center in Longmont? You indicated that it would not be the same as Kansas City.
Yeah, we won't have a couple of the amenities. Like, we had a donation from a doctor who wanted us to build a medical exam room. We have discovered that doesn't get a lot of use. But things like the kitchen and the fellowship hall certainly do. So the community center here in Longmont, it'll house our case managers. I think ultimately we'll probably have 3 case managers there. I will probably office out of there. My development director will office out of there, probably a couple other staff. We'll have somebody who manages the property work out of there. And as I mentioned, there'll be a fellowship hall and a kitchen. Some of the things we do in Kansas City are things like cooking classes, and we have classes. We have bankers come in and teach people how to balance the checkbook and how to do household budgeting and all sorts of things like that. So, and we will have those things here. We'll also have some nice outdoor space. There's going to be a couple of fire pits and some green space there for our residents. As you imagine, 240 square feet, you probably want to spend a little bit of time outside. So we try to facilitate that as well.
Well, and Paul, I think it's really interesting, the design that you put in. You called it trauma
Trauma-informed design.
Thank you. Yeah, trauma-informed design. I think that is, it's not only, for me anyway, it really shines a light into what vets have to deal with on a day-to-day basis and just how different their reality can be from somebody who hasn't been through that level of trauma. I wonder if you can talk any more about that and how do you decide what things to change and how.
Well, it's not as mysterious, I think, as maybe it sounds. A lot of it's actually common sense. So, like as an example, when you open the door and walk in, you would see that the bed is placed in one of the back corners, so that when a vet is lying in bed, they're looking at the door. They don't have the door behind them. And anybody that's served in the military knows you never want to have your back to a door or to an exit. You always want to see what's coming and going. We built them so they're quiet. We built them so they're quite livable. They're really nice houses. The finishes are incredible. These things have granite countertops. They come with 3/4 size fridges, microwaves, TVs, pots and pans, a desk. The vet does have a choice on one little area. Can either have a little dining table or a recliner. A lot of our vets choose the recliner for watching TV. The TVs are mounted up on the wall on a swivel, mounting. And what's really cool is when the vet leaves, when they graduate out of the program, they get to take all that stuff with them. So they get to take the fridge, the microwave, the TV, the bed, the desk, everything, so that they basically have a starter kit when they're moving in somewhere, which is really for a lot of these folks, that's been quite the big deal. But the trauma piece of it, it's as much about while we get clever with a couple of the design elements, it's really, again, coming back to dignity, privacy, recognizing these folks need to feel safe before they can really work on their problems. They need to be stable. They need to be safe. They need to feel like they've got some dignity, and then they can begin to work on the problems that got them in trouble in the first place. So, this is a big part of our success, but it's really about the case management. It's about getting these folks set up so that the case managers can really work their magic. That's where the magic happens, is the case managers doing their work. We work really hard to find out what is going on with a vet, and we don't demand a lot of things out of our vets, other than that they try, that they're always working on themselves, and that they're honest with us. We have some people that have substance abuse problems, and people, who drink. We don't ban drinking out of our houses. It's kind of pointless. They're going to do it anyway. We're not big on a lot of rules. And one of the things that we discovered, an unexpected consequence of putting a bunch of vets together, is they actually police each other quite a bit. There's a lot of peer pressure from the vets in our village in KC to sort of fly right, fly straight. And there's a lot of assistance there. There's a lot of people ready to give a leg up to someone who needs it. So it's a really interesting process. The homeless vets are an unusual subset of the homeless population. The things that drive them, the things that are creating the problems for them, and the solutions for them have a slightly different flavor than maybe the rest of the homeless population. And that's who we focus on. So I can speak to that better than I can speak to other areas of social services. But anyway, those are the big things for vets.
Thank you. Our next question is, what does wraparound service mean?
It means going to whatever lengths are necessary to find out what problems there are with a vet and finding solutions for them. So, that can be anything from, mental health assistance, substance abuse assistance, getting people to the doctor, getting them workforce training, you name it. Whatever, if there's a deficiency or a problem, we want to identify it, get it out on the table, and then come up with a solution. And I also want to say, VCP, we're not clinicians. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We're not going to open up a mental health clinic. We want to find a partner in town that's doing great work. We have found that here in Longmont. So we partner with folks like Bridge House and Hope and Mental Health Partners and Qualified Listeners, and you name it. That's what I've spent a lot of my time. I came to Colorado in May, and most of the last 8 months I've spent networking and trying to wrap my head around who's doing what in Northern Colorado, who's doing a great job, who has services that we can bring to bear for the vets we're working with. So, where we shine is the case management piece. We don't try to be the solution for everything, but we try really hard to bring solutions to bear for our clients. That's where we seem to do really well. And there's an unusual aspect, I think, of VCP culture, something I was really attracted to myself, which is nobody likes to take no for an answer. We hate taking no for an answer from anybody. So we always try to find ways to say yes, if it makes sense to say yes. We want to say yes. So we work really hard to do that.
All right, you touched on this at least a little bit, but if you want to add anything, the question is, how will you coordinate with the existing social services in Longmont? For example, Our Center, Hope, etc.
Yeah, we love those guys. Like I said, tomorrow we're going out on an outreach caravan with Hope and with a couple other folks that their organizations technically aren't allowing outreach activity right now, but we've got a couple people taking PTO to take part in the caravan. It's really all about making friends and identifying, just like I said, we're trying to get to know who's providing what services and who's doing a really good job with it. So yeah, all the folks you just mentioned, they're all on our radar. There's not a week that goes by where we're not introduced to somebody new. We're seeing our reach go out a little bit. Right now, we focus on Boulder, Weld, and Larimer. I've noticed that we've started picking up some things in Adams County and some other places up north. And I've also noticed that quite a few of the vets split between the VA in Cheyenne and the VA in Aurora. So as we have gotten, we've started working with the VA up in Cheyenne as well, and that has introduced us to some more vets that are up in the upper reaches of northern Colorado. So, that transportation issue that's always going to continue to be a thing. So, our folks they're putting some miles on their cars, and it's just going to be part of the landscape here. Is we got to get out and about. But we want to be good partners with these other organizations, and there's really some terrific work being done, and it's really exciting to get to partner with those folks. So there's some really quality people and some quality organizations here in northern Colorado.
All right. Why did you pick Longmont as opposed to other Front Range cities, or any other city for that matter?
Good question. A lot of stars aligned. So if the discussion about Longmont, I think, started about 2.5 years ago. As I understand it, the governor put out a challenge to the communities in Colorado to think outside the box on the homelessness issue. And what we found was we have a city manager and a city council in Longmont that are eager to take on this challenge. They're pretty progressive thinking folks. We've got a former city council member, Bonnie Finley, who was heading up an ad hoc homeless task force, who kind of latched onto this. And Kevin Mulshine, one of the principals with HMS, he's the M in the HMS. He was heading up an economic development task force in Longmont and looking at what other cities were doing on this issue. He wound up coming to Kansas City, was the last city he visited, and he fell in love with the village there. He thought to himself, "Man, I could live next door to this. This would be pretty good." So those things all came together, and and the HMS decided they wanted to donate the land to us. I will tell you, since that time, since in the last 2.5 years, we have had somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 inquiries from across the country, and about 700 pretty serious proposals from different communities. Down to here's the land that we would provide you. We would waive your building permit fees. There is serious interest in this concept. I mean, it's breathtaking. I almost can't explain it. It's something that people wrap their head around pretty easily, and people have been very enamored with it. As I mentioned, we're hoping to be in 8 cities by the end of next year. We'll be in St. Louis. We've already announced St. Louis, and we're getting ready to announce a couple other cities here in the next month or two. It was just it was a happy. I won't call it a coincidence, but a happy amalgamation of things all happening at the same time, and we pulled the trigger, and here we are.
All right. As you have been working on getting to know services, what gaps are you seeing locally to ensure success of the wraparound services?
Transportation. That is easily the number one issue for us in providing services. There's some very interesting dynamics here. Another dynamic is a lot of the homeless vets head up into the mountains when the weather's nice. They're really hard to get to when they're camping up in the mountains, and then they come down in October when it starts to get cold. But getting to those folks or figuring out how they can get to us, that is probably the number one hurdle.
All right. Do most of the veterans who move on to living independently tend to stay in the area or move out of the city or state?
In Kansas City, they have mostly stayed in the area. I don't know what to expect here. I would suspect that to be the case, partly because of that we're able to offer case management to folks even after they graduate out of the program. And I think that could be a motivating factor. I think that's been a motivating factor in Kansas City. Just you get used to having those resources and people who are willing to help you, and people generally don't want to move away from that. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
What kinds of jobs or career opportunities do the veterans move on to, and can they come back if any of them are needed?
In terms of the jobs, boy, it's all over the place. And I probably know just enough to be dangerous about this topic. I will tell you, something I was surprised to learn was that so many of these vets have jobs. Some of them making $50,000, $60,000 a year, but a crisis, puts them out on the street. A medical crisis, a big bill, something unexpected, and all of a sudden they lose their home. And it's not uncommon for us to have folks living out in cars, working steady jobs, but particularly here with the housing costs, unable to put together the deposit they need. They just can't get over the hump. And as I mentioned earlier, that's an area where we sometimes help people with emergency financial assistance. They just need a little bit of help getting over the hump. But it's everything. It's from there's white collar jobs, gray collar jobs, blue collar jobs. For the folks that are really hurting on job skills, maybe they did something in the military that doesn't translate into civilian life. We work very hard. We're good friends with Dan Savage in Boulder County, one of the veteran workforce guys. We've got resources to bring to bear for folks that need workforce assistance, but it's hard to characterize. It's literally all over the map. And again, I was surprised by some of these folks are making money. It's just they just had one big setback and need a hand up. And of course, other people they've had more than one big setback. So those wraparound services, they are tailored very specifically to the individual. It's not necessarily apples to apples between the vets that we serve. It's all over the place.
Do all residents get to take their starter kit appliances / furniture with them, no matter how long they stay? Do the sponsors refurnish, or will you look for some other avenues, for some other revenue sources for that? And if so, can you estimate the cost?
Yes. It doesn't matter how long they stay. As long as they're not being kicked out of the program. I think we've had 1 or 2 people get kicked out in Kansas City for pretty egregious violations of things. But for the most part, yeah, when people graduate, they get to take all that stuff. We love getting donated goods, and we've had some folks be very generous with us. We often have to spend cash on those things too, but yes, we raise money. When a vet leaves a tiny home, it gets painted. It gets all new appliances, new mattress. The whole. It's like moving into a new house. And that's a big volunteer activity for us too. We have a, like in Kansas City, there's a whole team of people that come in for the turnovers, and yeah, it can be a little expensive. I mean, you guys know what appliances cost, so it's wonderful when we get donated goods, and we certainly seek to get donated goods. We get quite a bit. Like a lot of our building materials, or when we build the houses, are donated. We're in discussion with one big building materials company here in Colorado, and I'm expecting to get 90% of our building materials donated to us. So there's some really generous corporations out there, and very generous individuals and foundations as well that help us out on this stuff. But yeah, we don't have any earned revenue sources, so we have to raise all the money that we spend on things like this, that we spend on our staff and all that kind of stuff. So we have a robust fundraising effort. And as I mentioned, when dust settles, we'll have about $1 million a year budget here. So that's about the amount of money that we'll have to raise each year.
And my own question, you had mentioned early on that really the core issue tends to be PTSD. And
yes.
I wonder, and I don't know if you have your finger to the pulse of this, but do you find that the armed forces are getting better at dealing with, identifying and treating PTSD, or do you see a trend?
I unfortunately would, at least my personal observation has been, no, the armed forces are great at creating the PTSD, not so good at mitigating it. I imagine they are getting a little bit better. I mean, the awareness is certainly much, much higher now than it was years ago. The VA is definitely getting better in its understanding of PTSD and how to treat it. But in general, I just have to say, and I'm not a clinical psychiatrist or psychologist. My personal observation is that we're just way behind the curve on this. We're catching up, and a lot of good things are happening. And I think the general public now, understands what, we didn't understand when people were coming home from Vietnam. I don't think anybody understood. They used to use the term shell shocked. And it was sort of a derogatory term, like people were weak or cowards if they were feeling this way. But of course, we have discovered that the vast number of people that have ever been in combat situations do have PTSD on some degree. And some of these folks really struggle with it. It just takes over their lives. So it's going to continue to be a problem. And unfortunately, for those who have experienced the things that create PTSD, it's a lifelong issue. A lot of folks are able to conquer it and live with it. It doesn't go away, and I never served in combat. I've only talked to, colleagues that have served in combat, but they'll all tell you it doesn't go away. You learn to cope with it, you learn to control it, but it's a factor. And you think about what might happen to someone when they have, they get $100,000 medical bill, or a death in the family, or some huge traumatic event on top of all that. And it can trigger a regression. So it's something that we'll be talking about and we'll be wrangling with for decades to come.
Mm-hmm. There are a bunch of people who didn't get to see the video that you showed, and I have some more questions as well. Are you able to show that video again? And do you want to do it now and take some more questions afterwards?
Yeah, if you'd like, I'm happy to show it again. Let me spool it up, and then we'll take some more questions.
That'd be great. Thanks, Paul.
Veterans Day tomorrow, two Kansas City vets will launch a new effort to help struggling homeless veterans here in Kansas City.
New tonight, 41 Action News report.
Under construction and it will run in January.
Another giant step forward to end veteran homelessness in Kansas City. The Veterans Community Project
Right
broke
now,
ground this
Kansas City,
morning on
the Veterans Community Project has a property where they're going to put 50 tiny homes, just like the one that you see behind me.
The Veterans Community Project moved 13 homeless vets into tiny homes. Now it's
Thank you for your wonderful service and Veterans Community Project as well.
Since January, all 13 tiny homes have been full, and VCP has transitioned 6 veterans into permanent housing.
A substantial portion of America's homeless are veterans, but too often traditional approaches just don't work when it comes to veterans homelessness. But in Kansas City, one group of combat veterans has found a solution. This first of its kind model has made enormous progress. And now Veterans Community Project has begun its national expansion and is looking for other communities ready to get serious about serving veterans.
What we wanted to do couldn't be done without commitment from the city. Veterans sleep on city streets and city parks. This is a local issue.
Every mayor in this country knows that you have to learn to do more with less. And one of the ways that we do that is through public-private partnerships. Veterans Community Project has been tremendous. This is something that I believe every mayor wants in their town. I can tell you from my perspective, it's one of the best things that's happened during the time I've been mayor. And I think that if you incorporate it into your city, your state, your country, it'll be one of the best things that you do as well.
After I came home from Afghanistan, I spent nearly 12 years running from the reality of untreated post-traumatic stress. When I hit my lowest point and finally decided to seek help, I quickly realized I didn't actually know how to do that. Fortunately, I live here in Kansas City, and even though VCP is best known for tiny houses, they also provide wraparound services to thousands of veterans, no matter their situation. They guided me through the process and made sure that I got the help that I needed. VCP was there for me, and now I have the honor of leading their national expansion.
What can the Veterans Community Project do on a national scale, do you think?
Absolutely. We can end veterans homelessness in this country.
The national push will put them in 8 more locations by 2022.
3 presidential candidates have now visited Kansas City. All of their trips here have one thing in common: the Veterans Community Project. Reporter Kat Reed.
I'm going to be sharing this kind of story everywhere I go.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Congressman Seth Moulton saw for themselves the way this village of tiny homes is solving veteran homelessness in Kansas City.
The VCP, as it's called, will break ground on a new village in Longmont, Colorado next month. They are in talks with many more cities interested in having their own tiny homes and food.
These homes all free of charge. This program now expanding to other cities nationwide.
We know how to end veteran homelessness. The only question is, which community is ready to step up and be our next partner? To get this done, we need your support. This is your opportunity to be more than thankful to veterans. This is your chance to be involved.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
All right. The next question is, are there additional things we as a community can do to further support these vets?
There's all sorts of ways. I talked a little bit about sort of our model, how we get funded and how we make the village happen. There's in particular, there's tons of volunteer opportunities. It's as much as anything, it's being aware of that there's a problem, that's in our backyard, and that there are solutions out there. There's all sorts of ways to help out financially or with people's time or with materials. It's amazing to me. And we've already got literally, I think probably more than 100 people have participated in some way with rounding up goods for things like socks and coats and, cold weather gear. We'll need people to volunteer in our outreach center when it's open. We'll need people to volunteer in the village when it's open, and we'll need a mess of volunteers to help us build the houses. That's kind of a one-time project, but man, there's a lot of work there. We've already been contacted by quite a few folks, and I'm loving the fact that the corporate community here, wanting to send out teams of people. So that's really exciting. But yeah, if somebody wants to get involved, we'll find a way to get somebody involved.
Do we know how many homeless vets there are in the area, and will there be enough homes to house them all to start?
We don't have an exact number. The estimate for Boulder County is somewhere between 200 and 300. And there's a sneaking suspicion on our part that the numbers are really a little higher. But again, it's, as I talked about earlier, it's really hard to get a count. As far as the housing piece goes, not every vet is really prepared to go into the housing program. Like I said earlier, we have to see progress in certain areas, and we have to see a commitment to continued progress in those areas, whether it's mental health, physical health, workforce readiness, household budgeting, all those things. We have to see, a light at the end of the tunnel there. We do try to stack the cards in favor of success. And that doesn't mean we won't work with folks that don't come into the housing program. We offer robust wraparound services to those folks too, but not everybody's ready to come into the tiny house program. There's no lack of people. I'm sure there'll be no lack of people in the pipeline. I'm surprised no one asked me either where the folks come from, so I figured I might as well address that too. So in our case management, we obviously run into a lot of people. And in Kansas City, that's where probably half the residents have come through VCP's case management. But we take referrals from other organizations. So, I fully expect folks like Bridge House and our center and Hope to be referring people to us once the village is up and running. And, if there's a vet that's positioned well for success in this program, we'll want to get them in it. It's not the ultimate solution. It's just 26 houses, with vets staying in them probably for 16 months on the average. So it's a wonderful program, and I suspect there's a much greater need than just the 26 houses that we're doing. But that's where we're starting. So I don't want to predict the future here, but obviously there's a need that outstrips that. But I suspect actually the meat of our work will be the other outreach that we'll be doing, the other folks that we'll be working with. We'll probably be working on an annual basis, be working with hundreds and hundreds of visits from veterans who need all sorts of other help. So that'll be a big part of what we do too.
Where will your outreach center be in downtown Longmont?
I'm not allowed to say just yet. It's a familiar city-owned building that's the likely place we'll land, but until it's a done deal, I'm not going to say what it is.
All right. And do you also partner with local veterans organizations like American Legion?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, the VFW in Longmont has been a terrific partner. In fact, they provided the color guard when we had our groundbreaking ceremony, and they've teamed up with us on financial assistance for a number of vets. They're a referral source for us. So yeah, we love those organizations, and of course, being veterans organizations, they run into situations or run into people who have situations that need help, and we're happy to have them in the mix.
All right, and I have reached the end of the. Oh no, sorry, I have some more questions. Have vets applied for the homes here, and if so, how many?
They don't get to apply. It's an invitation only thing. We don't really have a pipeline at the moment, but I suspect somewhere in the next couple of months we'll start putting together a list of people that we have worked with that we think might be good candidates for it. But it's very one-sided in terms of getting into the program. It's by invitation only.
And do you determine that invitation list just like you said with contact with the community?
Yeah, it's I expect about half the folks to probably come into the program as a result of just regular outreach, and I expect probably half the residents to come as referrals from other organizations.
Mm-hmm. Where do we go to find out what we can do to volunteer? A phone number or email address?
I would send everybody to www.vcp.org, and there's some links on there. There's a Longmont specific page on our master website, and there's a way on there there's a link to put yourself on the volunteer list. I'll also give my email address out here if anybody wants it. It's my first initial last name, P. Melroy @vcp.org. By all means, feel free to shoot me an email, reach out, and we're happy to talk to you.
I put those in the chat, and I want to make sure they're right. www.vcp.org.
Yes, and my email address has no decimal in it. It's just PMELROY.
Oh, I'm sorry. Repeat that one more time.
PMELROY, all run together, @vcp.org.
All right, my apologies. That's the correct one right there.
There you go. That's the right one.
Gotcha. All right. Well, if we have no more questions, I think Denise is going to do our concluding remarks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul. We really appreciate you taking your time to give us more information and give us a chance to ask you questions and find out more about what this specific village is going to be like here in Longmont. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And I also wanted to remind everyone that this presentation, as with all of our programs, are generously funded by the Friends of the Longmont Library. If you're interested in joining them and what they do, you're welcome to connect with them through the Friends of the Longmont Library website, or you can through the library's website as well. And we want to thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your evening to find out more about what's going on in our community. I do want to apologize for the time difference. I think we're just a little excited to get going there. So sorry about that if you missed the first part, but we're glad you were able to see the video again. And as you know, if you have more questions, feel free to contact Paul. So thank you so much for your time. And I wanted to also let you know that the recording of this program will be available on the Programs and Events page tab on the Longmont Library website, and that is at longmontcolorado.gov/library. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.